In this episode, we're going to take the anxiety out of the GIAC Public Cloud Security (GPCS) exam by turning it into something you can picture clearly, plan for calmly, and execute with confidence on test day. When people feel nervous about an exam, it is often not because they do not know the material, but because they cannot predict what the experience will feel like minute by minute. You can reduce that uncertainty a lot by understanding how the questions behave, how time pressure actually shows up, and how scoring works at a practical level. The goal here is not to hype you up or scare you, but to replace vague worry with a simple, realistic mental model so you can focus your energy on learning and recall instead of guessing what is coming. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A useful way to think about the exam is as a controlled environment that measures decision-making, not memorization contests or trick puzzles. That matters because it changes how you prepare. You want to practice reading carefully, recognizing what a question is truly asking, and choosing the most defensible answer under time limits. The exam does not reward speed by itself, and it does not reward overthinking either, so your job is to build a steady rhythm. Imagine yourself moving through questions in a way that feels repeatable and stable, where you can mark something uncertain and keep going without spiraling. When you do that, you are treating the exam like a process you can run, not a mystery you have to survive. Let's talk about what exam format really means, because people often misunderstand that phrase and then prepare in the wrong way. Format is not only whether the exam is multiple choice, it is also how questions are written, how answer choices are structured, and how much reading you should expect. Most questions are designed to check whether you can connect concepts rather than recite definitions. So many will give you a short situation and ask you to pick the best action, risk explanation, or control choice. That means you should train your brain to notice key words like most likely, best, first, and primary, because those words tell you what type of reasoning is required. A calm test taker is not calm because they are fearless, but because they have a routine for decoding question language. Timing is where a lot of stress comes from, so it helps to treat time as a resource you manage rather than a threat that chases you. The easiest way to do that is to build a simple pacing plan before you ever sit down to test, so you are not doing math while you are already under pressure. Even if you do not know the exact minute-by-minute allocation yet, you can still plan the behavior. A first pass that aims to collect easy points quickly, and a second pass for harder questions you marked. This approach helps because the exam does not care whether you answer in order. It cares that you answer correctly by the end. When you feel the clock, you want your default response to be a pacing adjustment, not panic. A common misconception is that you must feel confident about every answer before you move on, and that is one of the fastest ways to lose time. Confidence is not the same thing as correctness, and feeling uncertain does not automatically mean you are wrong. Many exam questions are built around close choices, where two answers seem plausible, but one is more complete or safer under the given constraints. In those moments, your job is to choose the answer that best matches the wording and the implied priorities, not the one that sounds coolest or most aggressive. A steady approach is to eliminate clearly wrong choices first, then decide between the remaining options using the question's specific wording as your compass. Now let's demystify scoring in a practical way, because people tend to either obsess over it or ignore it completely. Scoring is simply the system's method of turning your performance into a pass or fail outcome, and the best mindset is to treat it like a threshold you want to cross, not a perfect score you must chase. You do not need to be flawless. You need to be consistently correct across the exam's coverage. That means a strategy based on steady point collection is often better than a strategy that swings between long debates on a few questions and rushed guesses on the rest. When you think in terms of crossing a line, you naturally focus on reliability, which is the calmest way to test. A good way to reduce stress is to separate what you can control from what you cannot, and then refuse to spend mental energy on the second category. You can control your sleep, your pacing plan, your reading discipline, your ability to flag and return, and your review method. You cannot control which exact topics show up, how any single question is phrased, or whether one question feels unfair. When you accept that, you stop reacting emotionally to each surprise and start treating surprises as normal variants. Calm precision is not about never feeling surprise. It is about responding to surprise with a practiced method instead of a mood change. Because this is an audio-first experience, I want you to build a mental checklist you can rehearse without looking at anything. First, you start by scanning the question for what it is asking, not what it is describing. Second, you identify the constraint, such as least privilege, minimal blast radius, or shared responsibility, because constraints often narrow the correct answer quickly. Third, you compare each answer choice to the constraint and the wording, and you eliminate choices that solve a different problem than the question asked. Finally, if you are still uncertain, you make your best selection, mark it mentally, and move forward to protect your time budget. That routine is simple enough to repeat under stress, which is exactly the point. Another misconception is that the exam is trying to trap you with obscure trivia, and while some details matter, the exam tends to reward clear understanding of how cloud security concepts fit together. If you truly understand why certain patterns are risky, why certain controls exist, and how identity and access decisions shape exposure, you can answer many questions even if you cannot recall a specific term perfectly. Think of it like driving. You do not need to remember every internal part name to drive safely, but you do need to understand what happens when conditions change. If you study in a way that builds cause and effect understanding, you are less vulnerable to stress and less dependent on exact wording memory. That is a huge advantage when the exam presents unfamiliar scenarios. Let's discuss the emotional side for a moment, but in a grounded way that still supports performance. Test A nerves are normal, and the key is to prevent nerves from stealing your working memory, because working memory is what you use to hold a question's details while you compare answers. When you feel yourself rushing, slow down just enough to reread the final line of the question, because that is where the task is usually defined. When you feel yourself freezing, do the opposite. Pick an elimination step and take action, because motion breaks the freeze. These small behaviors help you keep your brain in problem-solving mode instead of threat response mode. You should also expect that time pressure feels different at different moments of the exam, and you can plan for that. Early on, people often spend too long because they feel they should be careful, while later they rush because they realize time is moving. A calm approach is to deliberately avoid both extremes by using a pacing check at predictable points, like after a certain number of questions. The point is not to do complicated tracking, but to reassure yourself that you are on schedule or to make a small correction early instead of a big correction late. Small corrections feel calm because they are manageable and they protect you from the spiral of realizing you are behind with very little time left. It also helps to have a plan for review that does not create chaos at the end. Many people assume review means rethinking everything, but that is not realistic and it is not helpful. Instead, review should be targeted. Revisit only the questions you marked as uncertain, and treat the second pass as a chance to apply fresh attention, not a chance to invent new doubt. If you change an answer, you should have a clear reason tied to the question wording or a concept you now recall better, not a vague feeling. Calm precision means you are deliberate even when you revise, and you do not let the pressure of the final minutes turn review into random switching. One more important mindset shift is to treat the exam as a reading test and a reasoning test at the same time. Some questions are missed not because the learner does not know the concept, but because they misread a qualifier like not, except, or least. Under time pressure, your brain wants to fill in what it expects, and that can cause you to answer a question you imagined instead of the one on the screen. The fix is simple but powerful. Train yourself to pause on qualifiers and to restate the question in your own words before you commit. Doing that consistently turns reading accuracy into a habit, and habits are what carry you when you are tired. As we close, I want you to walk away with a steady mental picture. The exam is a structured set of decisions you can make calmly if you manage your time, read precisely, and keep your emotions from driving your process. Format becomes predictable when you practice decoding question language and eliminating answers based on constraints. Timing becomes manageable when you commit to a first pass and a second pass instead of trying to be perfect on every question in order. Scoring becomes less intimidating when you focus on steady point collection and reliability rather than perfection. If you keep that calm precision as your default posture, you will feel more in control, and being in control is what lets your knowledge show up when it matters most.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.